Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Today we picked up a 3.5 McLane edger. It's a really good looking edger, but it's been sitting on the side of a house for a little while. Now, it doesn't have much rust on it. It looks really nice, and it just doesn't start. It doesn't want to run, but it's been sitting around for quite a while. It's got a diaphragm carburetor, so we're going to go ahead and rebuild this one and see how she comes out. So, all you new people out there, go ahead and subscribe. It's free, and it's what we work for. So let's get started. Okay, let's put you right here. Let's crank you way up. 6 lights. Let's crank you up. Okay, that should do it. And I cannot stress this enough. If you're working on one of these, take a ton of pictures. And I want to thank Bruce one more time for convincing me to set up this little stand. The air filter looks pretty rough, so we'll put a new one on there. Okay, now we can see the carburetor. Let's clear our little debris out. Now take a look at how these springs are attached and the linkage and everything. Super important that you take lots of pictures here. This will be where you want to end up when you're done. And it sounds easy now, but it won't be when you're coming back to it and putting it back together later. Because this all goes together in just the most fascinating way. So let's start out. First thing we're going to do is basically remove the tank from the carburetor. Got one little bolt down here. Where are we at? Got another one here. Got another one here. And I think 3 is the magic number, but it might not be. Let's look around. Let's throw a little light on the subject so I can see down in the little crevices. 1, 2, 3. Yep, now there's a gasket underneath here. So try to be gentle with the gasket. And there's also a bolt underneath usually. This tank doesn't have the bolt on it, but it's pretty common for that to happen. Put you there for a minute. Let's grab our magnet and see if we can get our bolts out of there. There's one. Oh, that one's still attached a little bit. There's 2. Give this one more turn. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. No, wait, you know what I just remembered? On this, there's also a bolt in this hole here, holding the linkage down. So we're going to take the linkage right here, we're going to choke it, and we can get to that additional bolt. I always forget that bolt, mostly because it's hidden when you do that. Let's get our other screw. And I usually put my little screws that I'm collecting as I go on a magnet, which makes them easy to keep track of. Okay, that one's tied up in the linkage just a little bit, but that's okay. Our tank should be loose now. Now, it probably won't come off easily because it's been attached to this carburetor forever and ever. So we'll gently try to pry it off. And I come around this side, go underneath it and say, and there we go. You felt it sort of oomph right there, and she's free. Now here, keep in mind you got a linkage here, and you got also another linkage going to the carburetor. You want to be gentle when you're doing this, because you don't want to tear your linkage all up and then have to buy stuff later. I don't mind buying parts, but I hate buying parts that I broke. So let's remove this. This is also how you adjust your throttle when you're done. You can scoot it back and forth to make sure you got the correct amount of travel on the lever. We're going to put this bolt back here. And now the fun part begins. I'll take you over here and Ouija you out. Now you're free. And of course, use care the whole way doing this. And you can see all your springs and whatnot. If you take lots of pictures now, You're going to save yourself so much aggravation later. And you're also probably going to save yourself having to purchase springs. Now this wires are shut off, and it's just on a little clip. That's our kill wire. It grounds out the ignition. And you see, that just fell off in my hand after that. That going back together will be just as difficult, I promise. The next thing we're going to do is take the muffler off. Mufflers are always in the way on these. Seems like it's a lot more work to take the muffler off than not, but it's a 3/8 and pretty much this thing's built with 3/8 bolts. We're going to take the top bolt all the way off, and then we just have to loosen the bottom bolt a little bit and it'll hop right off. And if you look under here, can you see that? I don't know if you can see it, so let me lower you down for a second. This little bolt right here, that's the reason we have to take all that linkage off. It's the bottom bolt for the carburetor. Okay, you get back up in your spot. There you go. Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, removing the muffler. You could probably do this working around the muffler, and it's a little bit tedious to take the bolts off. If your bolts are rusted to the point where they just simply won't turn, I see that occasionally. I still WD-40 them, let them sit for an hour, and then give it another run. Because you're going to find that this gas tank will go up, but it won't go down unless you unbolt the motor. Love the way these McLane edges are put together, but they're a little bit of work working on the carburetor compared to most engines. Let me switch to the other side so I can reach this a little bit better. Now my muffler's playing with me. And we're just about off. So now I'm going to loosen the other bolts on the other side. I don't know if you can see the muffler starting to dance now. And that should be enough to give me room to take this bolt off. Whoop. Can't even get the wrench on it decently now. Okay, that bolt's free. We'll turn the muffler and we'll slide it off. See, it's got a slot on the other side. Well, it's got a slot on both sides. So now we can see these bolts a little bit better. Makes life a whole lot easier. So we're going to grab our, what are we grabbing? I think it's a 27. I'll look in a minute. We're going to grab our 27. There's the easy carb bolt. Now let's go get to the hard carb bolt. And we are almost off. This whole thing's going to move as a unit in just 2 shakes here. Now let's go back to our 3/8 wrench for that one. I'm going to keep our springs and whatnot out of the way. Come on, buddy. See, now you wish they put a slot on the carburetor the same way they did on the muffler. It would make this a whole lot easier to do. Because there is no straight line to that bolt. She's coming, and there she is. And she's free. Now let's gently roll the linkage off of this. Try to get this gas tank out of the way. There we go. And our little Rubik's Cube carburetor is let go. I said our Rubik's Cube carburetors let go. There we go. And we've been nice and gentle. We know we haven't damaged anything along the way. Let's pull our air off, and we'll just leave her there. Now let's take her to the bench and break her down and clean her up. Next up is let's go ahead and break the carburetor down, and we're going to run her through the ultrasonic. Oh, it's just a touch smaller. And you can buy a diaphragm kit for these online pretty easy. There are adjustments to be had on this carburetor, but do not make any adjustments until you put it back together. Don't touch anything. See. Yep, and we're going to need a new bottom gasket for this too while we're at it. Hopefully we've got one of those sitting around. Okay, now what I'm doing is taking a look at everything and seeing if there's anything that concerns me. And there really doesn't seem to be. This one looks pretty good. This has a little pin that holds it still, so it can be a little bit tedious to take off. But you want to go back and forth, right there. You want to go back and forth and try to get a little leverage on each side. There we go. Now we'll find a gasket and a spring and all that whatnot. Yep, and if you look at the spring, well, I'll show you a new one in just a minute. After we get this in the bath, the spring is just shot. That's probably why she wasn't running decently. So we're going to go ahead and throw this in the ultrasonic and get her nice and shiny, and we'll see you shortly. Now everything's nice and clean, so let's get her back together. If you look at the old spring compared to the new spring, you can see the height difference. That would affect how it runs. And the diaphragm has a little bit of a bubble in it, and those would cause it to run poorly at best. So we're going to take our little spring, we're going to lay it back in its little hole. Okay, now that we've got all that in order, let's throw our diaphragm back on. I'm sort of pinching it with my fingers to hold it in place. Doesn't have to be perfect until you start putting screws in. It's all about getting the basic line up now. Now let's lay it on this. Let's do it this way. There you go, and it's almost there. That looks pretty good. Make sure we lined up correctly. And we look good. So now we'll get our screws just started just a little bit. The diaphragm doesn't go through this screw here. I'm going to use a hand tool to get the screw started. Been using the same screw gun for a million years, so I don't mind using it to start screws. These in particular are kind of little. Okay, looks good, looks good. Whoops. Come on, buddy. That's nice and snug. That's nice and snug. Now, I tell you what, I'll bet you a nickel we've got a functioning carburetor now. And that's it. We've got a new diaphragm. We've run it through the ultrasonic and cleaned up all the passages nicely. Screen looks good. So, we've got a homemade gasket. Let's go put her back on the tank, on the machine. We've got the top 3 bolts started and holding the gasket in place. So now we're going to, let's see, the first thing we're going to do is thread that linkage back on. Because if you remember that linkage, fought us a little bit on the way off. Just like that. Now we're going to ease everything back into the gas tank very gently. And get it back in its place, like so. I'll push that way out of my way. And now, this is definitely a Rubik's Cube when you're putting it back together. It can be challenging, but you want to take your time. You can see it's all going in, and it's struggling here and there, and some parts are a little tighter than others. Is that the right one? No, you're not. There we go. And now we'll start that first bolt. I'll give it a couple of turns. That's not really going to hold the carburetor on, but it's enough for alignment. Now we very gently ease our gas tank back into place. I said very gently. And we're bumping something here. Usually when you're bumping something, it's on the inside. So you want to be very gentle. And there we go. Now she's laying in her spot. And we'll tighten up a bolt. When I say tighten, we're not so much tightening it as getting it to the point where it'll hold on. Now we'll go around to the other ones and get a couple threads started. And you can see it definitely battled us just a little bit, but it's all about being gentle and finding a spot. And if you took a lot of pictures, this next part's easy. We got to put our tube here still. Did we block ourselves out? Did we block ourselves out? Yeah, we blocked ourselves out. So we got to loosen this one back up. You want to put our little 70s emission tube back on. Get all of it back in place. And then we start tightening things back up. And then we'll do the linkage and we're done. And I expect after about 3 pulls, this thing will start. And then she'll be happy from there on out. I'm going to have to find us a new boot for this. She doesn't look terribly happy. Now note that nothing's tight right now. The carburetor to the engine is what holds this whole mess together. And so before we tighten any of these all the way down, we're going to put the other bolts on the carburetor. Let's go ahead and do that now. Just like last time, everything's a little wonky and everything's in the way. Taking this bolt out's a little bit time consuming. Putting it back in is even harder. Having a tripod over your shoulder while you do it makes it even harder. Let's see if our wrench can reach it. Yep, it's moving pretty smooth with the wrench, so I guess we just walk it in a little at a time. I don't know if I like that. Let's leave that right there and tighten the top one up just a little bit more. I think I probably already said this 5 times, but take your time when you're doing this. You're not in a hurry. You can see everything's starting to stabilize as you go. I'm going to back this bolt all the way out and make sure she's threaded in nice and straight. Yeah, it feels good. And she's finally seated. So we'll go ahead and come back around and seat the top one. And that's it. All we have to do is tighten everything up. Throw the linkage back on and run her. Let's get our hidden bolt back in place. Here, I'm going to put our hidden linkage bolt on second. There you go, she looks pretty good. Okay, now the ugly dirty part, the linkage. And the linkage will go right here for our choke lever. Least ways we think it will. Oh, our choke, we're upside down. Okay. Now let's put our choke linkage back together. We go up or down on that one. I don't remember. Let's pull that one screw back out. I've been in the habit of doing that one screw twice for so long I can't stand it. Every time I do these, I do the same screw twice. Okay. Let's check our choke. Choke is run. Choke is choke. Perfect. Now let's grab our springs. Can't quite reach our spring. Okay, let's slip the muffler back on. We'll go through here. We're using one finger to hold the gasket in place. Or trying to anyway. These mufflers can wear you out. But doing it with the muffler in place is 10 times harder. Okay, we got the muffler in place, we got the gasket, and we got a lot of slack on the bottom screw because we got to get this top screw in. And getting it started can be a little bit of work. And there it goes. I said, and there it goes. Okay, I've still got to put the screw in that goes underneath that, the choke and whatnot. I know you can't see much, but one of us has got to see, and unfortunately it's got to be me this time. Now leaving that screw out wouldn't hurt anything, but it is a hole into the gas tank. And there we have it. She should be good to go. Let's put some gas in her and see what we've got. Now we don't have any linkage yet going up top, but that's okay. Is that enough? Maybe. I don't know. Okay. That's a little over half a tank. That should do it. Now we're going to put her on the floor for the next part. I went ahead and hooked up the throttle lever and the kill wire. So let's give her a run. Let's see what she's got. First thing we'll do is give her a full choke. You can see the butterfly closes correctly. All's good. We'll run her up a little bit and give her a pull. She might start straight up and we might have to pull her a few times. Up, 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 up. So if you're going to play with your McLane Edger at home, take lots of pictures. Take a lot of pictures. You can't have too many, but you can have too few. This one came out really nice, but I've done quite a few of these along the way, so I sort of know where the linkage belongs. And like there's some screws that I'll put in and then take back out and put them back in later, only because they hold things in place. But you sort of learn that along the way. If you watched, you'll know what screws to go ahead and put in and take back out. It's like when you're placing the carburetor on the gas tank, you want to put screws in, get it all lined up, get the gas tank snugged up, take it out, then put the linkage in, put the screw back in. It's just easier that way. That way you know your gasket is squared up nice and even. Okay, thank you all for watching, and I hope you subscribe. We'll see you next time.